The Hunting of the Last Dragon, from Sherryl. Chapter 4. Hail, brother. 'Tis straight into the tale today, for this is the hardest part of it for me, and the sooner done, the better. On the way back to Doran, I practiced with my new bow, shot at a hare and hit a hill. The wind was stronger than I judged, and sent my arrow amiss. The road seemed longer too, and it was sunset when I felt the woods and began to climb the last rise that lay between my home and me. Most of the time I walked with my head down, watching the road for ruts and holes. But as I left the woods and began to climb the hill, I smelled smoke in the air, and raised my eyes. I saw a terrible thing. The brow of the hill still hid my village, but the sky above Doran was black with smoke, spreading high and wide, veiling the low sun. Disbelief went through me first, and then a fear so deep that I could scarcely breathe. I ran up the hill, stumbling in my haste, half blind, with acrid fumes, fine ash, and tears. Doran was gone, burned bare. Trees, wheat, farm carts, plows, vegetable plots, sheep, goats, chickens, everything was gone. Only some of the clay block walls of the cottages still stood, and they were black, many cracked and fallen in the heat. Thatched roofs were gone, the little wattle fences between the houses, the wooden sheds where pigs were kept, the plows and carts, all gone. I recognized nothing, for everything was black. Even the little lanes had vanished, or I could not make them out, with fences and gardens and farm buildings disappeared. There was nothing but ash and glowing embers, and smoke, and the stink. I don't remember much of that night. I still have nightmares of running to and fro on the edges of the glowing ash, choking and retching in the smoke, howling for my parents, for little Addie and Lucy, and the twins, and grandfather. In my dreams the air is full of screams and wails, and I suppose they were mine. I could see my home, a blackened husk. I tried to run to it, but the embers and heat and fumes beat me back. The air was full of the smell of roasted meat. And there was another smell, deeper than the smoke, a sulphurous smell that stung my eyes and nose, and tasted bitter in my mouth. I still can taste it, even now. The next thing I remember clearly is washing my hands at dawn, in the stream that ran to the ruined mill. My palms were blistered, bleeding, covered in black ash. My clothes were filthy, everything was black, and the soles of my boots were scorched. I remember that I washed my face in the stream and looked up after, expecting to see the village there as it has always been. And Addie running up to vex me with some new game she wanted me to play. Several times I did that, washed and looked up, craving to see Doran again the way it was. But it was not, and Addie never came. There was no wind, and the day was hot, uncannily quiet. No birds sang, no cattle lowed, and no crickets chirped. I found one tree at the edge of what had been the south wheat field. I climbed up and sat there, high in the branches among the ash-laden leaves, hiding, perchance, waiting. From there I could see the layout of the village, and better make out where the houses had been, though much was hard to recognize, scattered in the ashes and across the stubble in the charred fields, were distorted piles of blackness. I realized, after staring at them for some time, what they were, and horror so great came over me that I screamed and wept, and curled up into a little ball in the tree, and prayed for death, cursing the mischance that had led me out of the village that day, guilty that they all had died, and I had not. Then I slept, evil dreams mingling with the stink of smoke and death. I awoke with a shout and an almighty crash, and found myself flat on my back on the ground, with human legs all around me. I cried and laughed, thinking they were my own Doran folk, and it all had been a dreadful dream. But then a man bent over me, and I saw that it was Tybalt. I could tell from his face, and from the other faces bending close, that it was no dream. Around me, people were arguing about what caused the fire. Some were saying it had been soldiers. Others said that it was the wrath of God, or the beginning of Judgment Day. Then someone had said the Black Death must have come to Doran, and the people had shut themselves in and burned themselves and all they had to keep the pestilence from spreading. I lost my wits, I think. I seem to remember howling like a madman and kicking and biting the people who tried to help me. I refused the food and drink they offered me, even refused to touch my bow and arrows, which a boy had found somewhere. I am ashamed to think how rude I was to them, telling them to saw it off and leave me be. Tybalt tried to reason with me, but I swore at him, and in the end he forced me onto the long covered wagon he traveled with and slept in, with his family. I fought, and he hit me, I think, for I woke up with a throbbing head and aching jaw, and found myself alone in the wagon, being jolted along the road like a prisoner going to his hanging. My very teeth rattled, my head ached, and my heart was so sore I wept in pity for myself. And that, Brother Benedict, is how I came to be staying with Tybalt's family, and how I came to meet up again with Lizzie Littlefeet. I had told enough for today, for thinking on these things make me mortal tired. I'll go for a walk around the monastery gardens, for they are very beautiful, and there is peace in them. Mayhap I'll find Brother Tobit in the vineyard, with his hoe and cheery face and wicked jokes. Did he ever tell you the story about Adam and Eve and how they... By God's bones! Are you writing this down as well? I'm off.